Thank you very much. The judgment on the Troika approach, clearly the approach was initially one that looked like, well, we just have to deal with a standard problem of deficits here. The size of the deficit was huge. I call it a rounding error because they were talking about 5%. It was really 15%. Now, when you are at 15%, to come down to 5 or 4 or 3, it takes a few years, which is happening now. And it takes 30 or 40% of debt to GDP to accumulate over time. And perhaps, the interest rates were higher. There were penalty interest rates. The program was designed to be a much shorter program. All this, and the PSI was completely unrealistically flawed, the participation of the private sector. We lost 2 full years with Greece. We should have said 2 years ago, this is not sustainable, this is not tenable. And when the private debt was 300 billion, not 200 billion, 300 billion, we should have said 50% or whatever it takes. Now we finally got it down to when after 1 year or 1.5 years of paying cash 100 cents on the euro to the private sector creditors from your taxpayers, from Europe and from the IMF, then we realized it was not tenable. I call that the original sin. We could not, and you are witness, madam, we could not talk about the R word, the restructuring. We were not allowed to talk in the ECOFIN about the R word because it was considered, I quote, irresponsible. And I quote again, irresponsible. And I quote again, irresponsible. Like St. Peter, I was taught 3 times by very high officials in different moments that it was irresponsible to even suggest that there should be a restructuring. Well, in the end, you know, they forgot it was from Mexico and we had restructured the debt of Latin America. Nothing happened. After we restructured our debt, we never looked back. We've been growing and it's been okay, you know. Why? Because it used the euro. If you use the euro, you can't go bankrupt, you can't overborrow, you know, you can't go wrong. Now, it used to be that the controls that you're looking at now were not in place. And you allowed this to happen. It doesn't have to be. You could have done it with a drachma, you could have done it with a euro, you could have done it with a Deutsche Mark, whatever. If you overborrow, you can't pay your debt, you get 160% debt to GDP. Should have recognized it from the very beginning. But we lost the train because for 1 year we were paying the creditors 100 cents on the euro, saying that it was irresponsible to even think about not paying them. So the Troika has now changed completely its approach. We congratulate them. It's better late than never. But did we lose the opportunity? Let me just tell you, madam, the cost of saying we couldn't restructure, we couldn't default, or we couldn't because you use the euro, the uncertainty in terms of stock markets, in terms of commodity markets, in terms of employment, in terms of growth, has been like 50 or 70 times the totality of the debt of Greece. Europe should have gotten the thing and said, okay, we buy all the debt of Greece, we isolate the thing, forget about it, we'll distribute the costs. That would have been like 10 times less expensive than is happening now. Why? Because, of course, you cannot touch it. It was the original sin, you know. So this is very bad. But it happened already now. I hope we learn from that and that we get very realistic. I hope we don't need to take another look at something like this, ever. But if we do,